Christina, you've got to be kidding me. Are you still using that prehistoric phone from, 2017? My brother Matt chuckled, flashing his new iPhone 18 Pro as we stood around the massive Christmas tree in my parents' living room in Denver, Colorado. Look at this relic. It belongs in a museum. My name is Christina Evans. I'm 29. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the black sheep, or as my mother once whispered to her sister on the phone, the frugal disappointment. While my siblings flooded their social media with luxury handbags, spontaneous flights to Paris, and sushi that cost more than my rent, I was the one scouring garage sales and buying generic brand cereal. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment above an old bookstore on the less glamorous side of town. But while they chased the appearance of wealth, I chased something they couldn't even see. It still rings and texts. That's all I need, I answered flatly, tucking my old phone into a worn canvas tote I'd gotten at a flea market in Santa Fe. My sister Melissa sighed as if I'd just insulted her personally. She adjusted her diamond tennis bracelet and pushed her designer glasses up her nose. Christina, seriously. You're nearly 30 and you dress like a high school art teacher from the 70s. She probably is an art teacher, Matt smirked. Except one who lives off peanut butter and powdered milk. The room erupted in polite chuckles. I'd heard it all before: every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every random brunch where I dared to show up wearing a coat that wasn't cashmere. I was immune to the surface-level insults now. But that didn't mean they didn't sting. My mother, Susan, perched on a velvet ottoman and adjusting gold ornaments on the 12-foot tree, let out a long, exhausted sigh. You know, honey, it's just confusing. You have a degree in software engineering. You could be doing anything. Instead, you're working part-time at that used bookstore and running around with grocery coupons. Dad, Gregory, grunted from his leather armchair. We taught you better than this. Budgeting is one thing. But living like you're in the Great Recession? Matt snorted. Remember when she brought her own tea bags to that steakhouse for my birthday? I thought the waiter was going to cry. Everyone laughed, except me. What none of them knew was that every coupon I clipped, every worn sweater I restitched, every avocado I passed on at the grocery store, that was all part of a bigger game. A strategy they couldn't begin to comprehend. I had built something in silence. Something massive. I'm doing fine, I replied softly, watching Matt's girlfriend, Hannah, wave her $1,300 purse in the air like a badge of status. She'd once told me she wouldn't be caught dead in anything that didn't come from Paris or New York. None of them knew that in just a few hours, everything would change. And it would all start with the phone they mocked. We moved to the dining room, where Melissa immediately pulled out her phone to snap photos of the artisan meal our parents had spent 3 days preparing, or rather, ordering from a private chef. She dramatically whispered to Hannah, she brought her own water again. Probably filtered it in a mason jar herself. Mom chimed in without looking at me. Christina has always been unique. She emphasized the word like it was a diagnosis. Even as a kid, she hoarded her allowance instead of buying toys like a normal child. We thought she'd grow out of it, Dad added, sipping wine. But she's 29 and still acting like money is an endangered species. I quietly chewed my dinner, nodding along while they painted me as the family eccentric. I didn't bother reminding them that while they took trips to Miami and stayed in overpriced hotels, I was working on my laptop night after night building what would become the most downloaded personal finance app in the country. While Melissa posed in front of luxury cars she didn't own and Matt drowned in debt from 3 failed startups, I wrote line after line of code with a single goal: freedom. But to them, I was just the girl in hand-me-downs with an embarrassing lifestyle. She even has a computer science degree, Dad muttered, cutting into his prime rib. And instead of working at a tech firm, she's selling old books and doing God knows what on the side. My mother nodded solemnly. We just want her to meet someone responsible. A man who can help her understand what it means to live. I stared at the silverware. I didn't need a man to save me. I was earning more than everyone at that table combined, passively. My app, budget-wise, had gone viral during the pandemic. It was featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, even had a short segment on Good Morning America. It was discreet. It didn't scream money. And that was the point. Matt leaned back in his chair, scrolling on his gold-plated phone. Took Hannah to Cabo last month. $8,000, but you only live once, right? You should spend your money however makes you happy, I said genuinely. I didn't add that his vacation cost less than what I made daily while sleeping. Hannah looked up. So, what do you actually do, Christina? Like for work? App development, I answered. Like, games? No. Personal finance. Melissa scoffed. That's cute. You always were so good with pennies. It was always the same. They thought they were being funny, but they didn't know. Not yet. After dinner, we exchanged gifts. Mine were modest but personal: homemade jam, a vintage poetry book, a hand-stitched scarf. Meanwhile, they unwrapped brand-name items bought on credit cards they hadn't paid off from last year. These cookies are actually really good, Matt said, taking another bite. You use that ancient oven in your apartment? I smiled. Same one. Hannah looked stunned. You're like, so, grounded. She said it like it was a bad thing. Around 9 p.m., Matt excused himself to the bathroom. I'd left my phone charging on the kitchen counter. I'd been checking investment updates earlier, and apparently, I hadn't closed the banking app. He saw it. I knew the moment his face changed. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then sheer, open-mouthed shock. Christina, he called out. His voice didn't carry arrogance anymore, it carried something else. Everyone turned to look. Can you come here for a sec? I stood up. Calm. Collected. Ready. This was it. The moment the curtain would be pulled back. Matt stood frozen in the kitchen, my phone in his hand, his thumb hovering near the screen like it had betrayed him. The room fell uncomfortably quiet. I could see the color drain from Mom's face as she glanced at Dad. Melissa paused mid-scroll on her phone. Hannah sat upright, brows pinched in confusion. What is it, Matt? Dad asked. Matt didn't respond right away. He simply looked at me. Christina, is this real? His voice cracked, almost inaudibly. I stepped into the kitchen, heart calm, fingers steady. What are you talking about? He turned the screen toward me. It was my banking app, still open. Still glowing. Still displaying the balance. $12,408,973.17. Beneath the balance, a stream of live updates showed income from BudgetWise, dividend deposits from index funds, and alerts from property management software for my 2 rental properties in New Mexico. It was all there. Nothing hidden. This can't be real, Matt whispered. I took the phone gently from his hands and locked it. It is. His eyes were wide, red-rimmed. $12 million. The noise of chairs scraping echoed behind us as the rest of the family shuffled into the kitchen. What's going on? Susan asked, clearly irritated by the drama. Matt pointed. Mom. Dad. Christina has over $12 million. I saw it with my own eyes. For a beat, no one spoke. You could hear the furnace hum and the snow ticking lightly against the windows. Then Melissa laughed. That's hilarious. What, she got into crypto or something? I didn't answer. Dad stepped forward and yanked the phone from my hands, putting on his glasses with shaking fingers. He stared at the screen, then scrolled through the app. His jaw locked. She's not joking. Mom gasped. What? Melissa snatched the phone and stared at the numbers, her lips parting slightly. Is this a fake app? Is this some kind of prank? No, I said calmly. That's my real balance. That's my business. You created a business? Mom asked slowly. I created BudgetWise. You know, the app that helps people manage their finances. It's been downloaded over 40 million times. There it was. The sentence that shifted the earth under their feet. Matt blinked. Wait, that's your app? BudgetWise? That's yours. Melissa choked. The one that was featured on Bloomberg? I have that app on my phone. Everyone in my office uses it. I nodded. I built it. In my apartment. Over the past 5 years. Dad sat down heavily at the kitchen table. You've been sitting on this all this time? Living like some minimalist monk. Why wouldn't you say anything? Because I knew this exact moment would happen, I said. The second the number in my account became more important than who I was. Mom leaned against the counter for support. But you clip coupons. You shop at thrift stores. You live in that showbox apartment. I live beneath my means. I believe in financial independence. That's literally what the app teaches. Matt let out a hollow laugh. So while we were mocking you for saving pennies, you were making millions? I raised an eyebrow. Yes. A long silence followed. Then it began. Melissa stepped closer, her voice changing to something syrupy. You know, Christina, I always admired your discipline. You were just so grounded. Honestly, we could all learn from you. My eyes narrowed. Really? Because 2 hours ago, you said I looked like I raided Grandma's closet. That was just a joke, she said quickly. We're sisters. We tease each other. Mom cleared her throat. Sweetheart, if you had just told us, we could have supported you. Helped you grow. Promoted your app. Supported me? I repeated. Mom, you once told your coworkers I was in a weird phase because I brought leftovers in a glass jar instead of eating out. That was taken out of context. No, it wasn't. You were embarrassed by me. All of you were. Dad stood up, suddenly eager. Christina, I'm proud of you. Truly. I just wish we had known. We could have invested. Guided you. You mean, controlled it, I replied. Just like everything else. Matt scratched his head. Look, forget all that. This is amazing. We can do so much together now. Together? I asked. He smiled, that fake smile he used when he was asking for something. I've been working on this startup idea. It's a high-performance nutrition brand for athletes. Very niche, very scalable. I just need a little funding. Maybe like $2 million to kick things off. Melissa jumped in, eyes gleaming. And I've been looking at condos in Aspen. There's this stunning place near the slopes. Only $1.8 million. I could pay you back, obviously. Mom added softly, your father and I were just talking about our retirement. We thought maybe we could finally get that lake house we've dreamed of. Just something modest. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Quiet, disbelieving laughter that rose from my chest like a storm that had waited years to break. You're serious. You all just pivoted that fast. Melissa scowled. You're our sister, Christina. Family helps family. No, I said. Family mocks family. Family belittles the bargain hunter every holiday. And now that I've got money, suddenly I'm worth something? Dad's voice sharpened. We made sacrifices to raise you, Christina. The least you can do is show some gratitude. Gratitude? I turned to face him. I spent years being shamed for not being flashy. For being careful. I've had enough of this narrative. You weren't worried about me. You were ashamed of me. Mom tried again. This changes everything. No, I said. It doesn't. It just shows me who you really are. Matt looked frustrated now. You're gonna be like this? After everything? Selfish much? Selfish. I repeated. For not handing over the wealth I built on my own, without an ounce of help from any of you. Silence. I looked around the room. At these people who suddenly wanted to play nice because they saw dollar signs. I wasn't angry. I was finally awake. I stood there, in the center of my parents' kitchen, surrounded by stunned silence and faces I'd known all my life, suddenly unrecognizable. What once felt like family now felt like a courtroom. Their eyes weren't filled with love or pride. They were calculating. Cold. Curious. Not one of them had asked how I was feeling. Not one had said, I'm proud of you. Instead, they scrambled for pieces of a pie they never helped bake. I've always said you were the smart one, Melissa said suddenly, as though trying to rewrite the last decade of our relationship. I turned to her. You once called me the basement-dwelling cousin of Scrooge McDuck at Thanksgiving. She blinked, pretending not to remember. It was just a joke. No. It was a message. Every comment, every eye roll, every time you turned me into a punchline, you all made it clear I wasn't good enough because I didn't look wealthy. Matt threw up his hands. So what? You're gonna punish us now? For being normal? I tilted my head. Normal? You mean entitled? Mom stepped forward, her voice syrupy sweet. Honey, you're misinterpreting. We just want to be part of your success. That's not a crime. I smiled tightly. No, but expecting a payout for treating me like a burden all these years? That might be. Dad exhaled. Christina, come on. Enough of this drama. You're not the victim here. You've got $12 million. Don't act like we hurt you. I looked at him for a long moment, The man who once told me I was wasting my potential because I didn't own a car. You know what hurts? I said quietly. Hearing my father tell strangers that my sister is the one with a real job, while I'm the weird tech girl who's still figuring it out. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then Hannah, of all people, broke the silence. Christina, if I can just say something. I think what you've done is amazing. Truly. But, maybe this is a chance to heal some wounds. Bring the family together. I looked at her. Beautiful. Polished. Strategic. You think money fixes what's broken? I asked. It only reveals where the cracks were hiding. Matt's jaw tensed. Don't be naive. You think people build empires alone? You need people. You need us. I needed you, I corrected. And you gave me silence, judgment, and backhanded pity. Melissa folded her arms. So you're just going to hoard it all? Live in that tiny apartment forever and let your family suffer? No, I said. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. Living on less, investing more, helping people who actually want to learn how to manage their money. Dad's voice rose. So, strangers get help. But not your own parents. You raised me to be independent, I replied. You just didn't think I'd become too independent to need your approval. Mom tried again, this time with moist eyes. Christina, we made mistakes. But we love you. I stared at her. No. You love what you thought I was until tonight. The quiet one. The background character. The bargain hunter. You loved that I didn't outshine anyone. Matt's tone turned desperate. Okay, fine. You win. You've made your point. But I'm your brother, and I'm telling you, this startup I'm working on is solid. If you gave me even $500,000, I cut him off. Your last 3 startups failed. One was an app that connected dog owners with dog influencers. The second was an AI-powered mirror that told you if your outfit was social media ready. And the third? You pitched a line of vegan protein bars made with crickets. They were sustainable, he snapped. They were inedible, I said flatly. Melissa scoffed. This is pathetic. You're drunk on your own success. That's why no one wants to be around you. No, I said. You didn't want to be around me before you found out. And now you can't get close enough. Hannah glanced between us all, clearly trying to remain neutral. Look, what if you funded something small? Like a trial round. Just so Matt can prove he's serious. I turned to her. Hannah, you laughed when Matt called my apartment the Flintstone suite last year. You said I was playing pretend poor for attention. Her eyes went wide. I didn't mean it like that. But you did say it. You all did. Every snide joke, every eye roll, every time I offered to split the bill and you said, no, Christina's saving for the apocalypse. I was saving for freedom. I was building a life. You were building debt. The room fell silent again. Then Melissa's tone shifted again to sugar-coated manipulation. Okay. Let's start over. Clean slate. You have this incredible opportunity to bring the family together. You could be the hero. I shook my head. I didn't build Budget-Wise to be a hero. I built it because I got tired of watching people dig holes they couldn't climb out of. Dad's eyes narrowed. So now you're better than us? No, I replied. I just worked harder. Smarter. And more quietly than you ever noticed. That was the moment my phone buzzed again. A notification. Wire transfer received, $34,219.85. Dividend payout posted. User milestone achieved, 10 million active monthly users. Matt read the screen over my shoulder. You're still making money. Right now. While we're standing here. Yes, I said. That's what passive income looks like. He laughed, bitterly. Jesus. You really don't need anyone, do you? I paused. I needed honesty. Support. A little respect. That's not too much to ask from your own family. Mom tried one more time, her voice trembling. Christina, we didn't know. We didn't see you. I nodded, emotion finally creeping into my throat. Exactly. You never saw me. And now that you do, you only see numbers. I stepped back from the conversation, my phone once again in my pocket, its screen dark. I felt like a spotlight had been shining on me all evening, but now it had turned inward on them. And they didn't like what they saw. For once, I wasn't the one squirming. But the evening wasn't over. Not even close. The front doorbell rang. Everyone turned, surprised. Dad muttered, "Who the hell?" He opened the door, and I saw the beginnings of my extended family spilling into the hallway: Aunt Carrie, Uncle Nolan, their teenage son Tyler, followed by Grandma Elaine, all smiling like they'd arrived for a holiday parade instead of a battlefield. "Surprise," Aunt Carrie beamed, holding up a box of cinnamon rolls. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd drop by." I raised an eyebrow. We lived hours apart. Nobody accidentally dropped by. "What is this?" I asked flatly. Uncle Nolan offered a warm chuckle. "Your cousin Tyler saw something on social media. Thought we'd come see how you're doing, superstar." Melissa's face twisted. "You posted about this?" "No," I said. "I haven't posted anything in years." I turned toward Matt. He avoided my eyes. It was him. I knew it instantly. Probably texted someone, bragged to the wrong cousin, and now here we were, extended family vulturing into the house with dessert and expectations. Grandma Elaine wrapped her soft arms around me. "Oh, sweet girl, we always knew you had something special in you." I stiffened in her embrace. She used to say I was off, that I was too quiet, too weird, and that I should smile more if I ever wanted to find a nice man. "Congratulations," she whispered. "We're just so proud." Aunt Carrie swooped in next. "So, budget-wise, huh? I have that app. Didn't know you were the brains behind it. You must be making a killing." I nodded but said nothing. Then came the shift. The same shift I'd seen hours ago, now playing out like a script being passed from hand to hand. Uncle Nolan pulled me aside. "Christina, I've got something you might be interested in. Renewable energy. Huge potential. I've got an investor meeting coming up in January, and I think." "No," I said quickly, before he could finish. He looked confused. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, Uncle Nolan. I'm not investing in anything tonight. Or tomorrow. Or ever. Especially not with people who've never supported me until money entered the equation." Aunt Carrie stepped in, wounded. "That's not fair. We've always been family." "Exactly," I said. "So why did it take $12 million for you to see me?" A heavy silence settled again. Then Grandma Elaine spoke, voice soft and slow, as if summoning the emotion she had denied me for years. "Sweetheart, your grandfather and we've had some trouble with our prescriptions and the cost of his care. I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious." I looked at her and really tried to find some part of me that wanted to help. But there was a wall there. Built over decades. I saw it so clearly now, how love in this family had always come with conditions. I had simply never met them. Until now. "I'm sorry," I said. "I really am. But this isn't how you repair damage. Not with guilt. And not with bills." Melissa snapped, "Oh come on, Christina. Now you're punishing Grandma." "I'm not punishing anyone," I replied. "I'm protecting myself. For once." Dad rubbed his temples. "This is ridiculous. We're not strangers. We're your family. You don't treat family like this." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what I was thinking when you all laughed at me every Christmas dinner for bringing my own mashed potatoes because I couldn't afford gluten-free sides." Mom interjected, her voice tight with panic. "We didn't know you were building something." "If we had known, if you had cared," I interrupted, "you would have asked." No one moved. Then Matt spoke again, quieter now. "Christina. I get it. I really do. We were wrong. But isn't the whole point of success to take people with you? Elevate your family?" I nodded. "Yes. But only if those people didn't spend years trying to clip your wings." He stared at me, no longer angry, just stunned. I continued, "You want to know what's worse than being mocked for being poor? Being begged for money by the same people who mocked you the second they find out you're rich." That landed hard. No one spoke after that. Eventually, I walked back to the living room, picked up my scarf, and slung it around my shoulders. The one I had knitted myself last winter when I couldn't afford to turn the heater on for more than 5 hours a day. I walked to the front door, opened it wide, and turned back to them. "Here's the deal," I said. "There will be no lake house. No condo. No startup fund. No Tuscany wedding. No silent partnership. And no inheritance advancement." "Christina," Dad began. No, I repeated, sharper this time. You spent years making me feel like less. And now that you see my value, you want access to it. I paused, looking around the room at each of their stunned, bitter, desperate faces. But what you don't understand is, I haven't changed. I'm still the same woman who brought her own tea bags to dinner. Who wore thrift store jeans. Who made her own gifts and used coupons at CVS. The only thing that changed was your perception. That's not my problem. That's yours. And then I stepped outside, into the quiet night. The air was cold. My breath came out in little clouds. But I felt warm for the first time in a long time. Behind me, no one followed. Not a single one of them. And that told me everything I needed to know. By the time I reached my car parked a few houses down, the cold had seeped through my scarf, but I didn't shiver. Instead, I felt light. Not happy. Not proud. Just weightless. There was a unique kind of liberation in finally speaking the truth, especially when you've swallowed it for so long that it becomes a second skin. For a moment, I stood beside my car, keys in hand, not ready to leave. I wanted to remember this version of myself. The version who chose self-respect over guilt. Clarity over obligation. Then my phone buzzed. 26 new messages. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't need to look. I already knew. Apologies, explanations, backpedaling. Some might have been sincere. Most, I suspected, were simply strategic. I opened none of them. Instead, I slid into the driver's seat, turned on the heat, and started driving not home, but to my office. If you could even call it that. A small, sun-drenched room above a used record store. Wooden floors. A desk that still had burn marks from a soldering accident during my first prototype for an app that never launched. The walls were lined with corkboards and sticky notes. And it smelled faintly of cinnamon and solder. It was perfect. Because it was mine. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up BudgetWise. I stared at the dashboard for a while. Millions of users. Dozens of languages. A global movement toward better money habits. And none of it happened by accident. I remembered the nights I worked 16 hours, the weekends I coded until my fingers cramped. The loneliness that came with building something no one believed in. And I remembered, too, how often I'd wanted to quit. How often I wondered if my parents were right, if I was just avoiding the real world because I was afraid to fail. But I hadn't failed. I had succeeded quietly, invisibly. In a world that only noticed loudness. And now that I was loud, they wanted in. The next day, I received a voice memo from my father. He never left voice memos. Christina. I didn't sleep much last night. Neither did your mother. We talked. A lot. About how we treated you. I won't say we didn't mess up, because we did. I guess we never realized how our comments landed. How they felt. There was a pause. I'm not good at this. But I want you to know we're sorry. Genuinely. Not because you have money. But because you're our daughter. And we should have done better. I listened to it twice. It didn't sound rehearsed. It didn't sound manipulative. It sounded human. Later that afternoon, Melissa called me. I didn't answer. But she sent a message. I looked at old photos today. Found one of us in that backyard playhouse. You built a fake bank with Monopoly money and made me take out a loan to buy a plastic pony. You've always been a genius with money. I was just too petty to see it. If you ever want to talk, not about money, not about help, just talk, I'd like that. I sat with that for a long time. Long enough for the sun to rise and set outside my window. Long enough for me to forget, for a while, the bitterness and just feel the ache of being seen at last. Was this growth? Or strategy? I didn't know. All I knew was that it was too late for them to rewrite history. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for me to write a better ending. Later that week, I got an email from Brent Lawson, a financial journalist I'd once admired, asking for an exclusive interview. Somehow, the news had leaked about BudgetWise's anonymous founder being a reclusive, minimalist tech entrepreneur from Colorado. They'd guessed me. I declined the interview. But I sat at my desk that night, thinking about the platform I had. The millions of people who didn't mock me, who didn't demand anything from me, who saw value in my voice because it helped them survive. So I wrote something. A blog post. It was titled, The Cost of Being Invisible. In it, I didn't name names. I didn't talk about the $12 million or the family drama. I talked about the loneliness of building something when no one believes in you. I talked about the jokes, the silence, the invisible labor that goes into creating a life outside the system. And I talked about value, how it isn't always seen, but it's always there. The post went viral within hours. Tens of thousands of comments poured in from women, developers, minimalists, outcasts, dreamers, and underdogs who had built their lives out of rejection and turned pain into fuel. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. Then came the next surprise. Matt showed up at my office. Uninvited. I spotted him from the window, pacing outside the record store, bundled in an expensive coat with the tags still on. I opened the door reluctantly. "Hey," he said, shuffling his feet. "I didn't know where else to find you." I leaned against the frame. "You found me." He held up a coffee. "My favorite brand. Black, no sugar." "You remembered," I said cautiously. He gave a sheepish smile. "You never let me forget it." We stood there in silence for a few seconds. "I read your post," he said. "Didn't know you could write like that." "You didn't know a lot of things about me," I replied. He nodded. "You're right." I crossed my arms. "Why are you here, Matt?" He hesitated. "Not for money," he said quickly. "I swear. I just wanted to say that I was wrong. All of us were. But especially me." "That's true." I thought success had to look a certain way. The cars. The watch. The apartment with the view. But none of those things made me feel accomplished. "You know what made me feel like crap?" I waited. "Seeing you stand in front of our entire family with all the grace in the world and realizing I'd never once treated you with an ounce of respect." I didn't answer. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you not to forget that I finally saw you. Even if it was too late." He handed me the coffee and turned to go. "Matt," I called out. He stopped. "I believe in second chances," I said. "But not when they're just requests in disguise." He turned to face me again, his eyes tired but sincere. "No disguise," he said quietly. "Not this time." That night, I stared at the ceiling in my apartment, the same one they'd mocked. But it didn't feel like a cave anymore. It felt like a cathedral. A space where something sacred had been built. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep everyone out. But I was very sure of who I'd let back in. Weeks passed. The frenzy that followed the Christmas fallout began to dull into a strange kind of quiet. A silence where words weren't spoken, but consequences were felt. I wasn't the one making noise anymore. But I could hear everything unraveling. It started with Matt. I found out through an old college friend of his who tagged me in a post, thinking I'd be excited. Sad to see Elevate Nutrition shut down before launch. All heart, but no roadmap. "Maybe next time, bro." Matt had tried, truly tried, to resurrect his dream. He pitched the startup again. Reached out to contacts. Wrote a business plan. But no investor would touch it after learning he'd blown through 3 failed ventures in 3 years. He burned through his savings chasing validation, trying to be the success he always pretended to be. Eventually, I learned he'd moved back into my parents' house. No more ski trips. No more cocktails in rooftop bars. No more calling me the weird sister behind my back. Just reality now. Melissa wasn't far behind. She tried to pivot her Instagram presence into a wellness brand, hoping her curated lifestyle and designer athleisure looks would land her a brand deal. But that didn't go well either. Apparently, credit card companies don't take influencer exposure as payment. She was evicted from her downtown apartment after missing 3 months of rent. Last I heard, she moved into a basement unit near the highway and was working 2 part-time retail jobs. One at a yoga studio. One at a boutique that ironically didn't carry the brands she used to flaunt. Her social media posts suddenly went dark. No more flat lays of avocado toast. No more mirror selfies captioned #CE energy. Just silence. My parents were the hardest to watch. Because while Matt and Melissa had built facades, my mom and dad had built expectations. They had believed, truly believed, that I would come around. That once I had money, I'd use it to lift them into the life they'd always wanted but never properly planned for. The lake house in Montana. The convertible dad always talked about but never test drove. The early retirement mom hinted at every holiday when she sighed about her aching feet from standing all day at the clinic. None of that was happening now. They were still working. Still budgeting medications. Still driving the same old sedan that rattled on cold mornings. And for once, they weren't blaming the economy, or their bosses, or bad luck. They were blaming themselves. I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. From my mother. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity overruled old scars. It was 4 pages long. Careful cursive. No corrections or scratched out words. Christina, I was wrong. Not just about you, but about everything I thought mattered. I raised you to think like us. To spend like us. To follow the script. And when you didn't, I thought you were lost. But it turns out, you were the only one who knew where you were going. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a second chance to know you as a woman, not just the daughter I thought I wanted. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I forgave her, but because I knew I would eventually. One day, I ran into Hannah at a grocery store. She wasn't wearing her usual high-end coat. Just a grey hoodie and jeans. She looked tired. There was no makeup on her face. And she wasn't walking with Matt. We both reached for the same carton of eggs. A cliché. Sure. But life is full of those when you least expect it. She noticed me and gave a small smile. Hey, she said softly. I nodded. How's Matt? I asked. She hesitated. Adjusting. I could see in her face what she wasn't saying. That their engagement was probably over. That his charm and ambition couldn't keep their relationship afloat without the illusion of success. He misses you, she added. I gave a half smile. He misses what I represent. She didn't argue. As I turned to leave, she said, you were right, about all of it. I stopped. You don't have to tell me that, I said. I know, she replied. But I wanted to. I kept building. Budget-wise hit another milestone, 50 million downloads. I hired 3 new developers and expanded the Spanish language support team. We launched a new feature that helped users escape debt faster by gamifying their progress. I donated to financial literacy programs across underserved school districts in the US. I funded an emergency shelter for women in Phoenix. And I paid off the mortgage of the record store owner downstairs who'd been struggling since the pandemic. But I didn't tell anyone. Not my family. Not even the news. Because I didn't need them to clap anymore. I didn't need them to see me. I needed to stay grounded in why I did this in the first place. For the people like me. The quiet ones. The overlooked. The underestimated. Then one rainy night in March, Matt called me again. I let it ring. Then another call. And then a text. Christina. Please. It's Dad. I froze. I called back immediately. Is he okay? I asked. Matt's voice was hoarse. He had a heart episode. It's not life-threatening, but he's going to need long-term medication. And he's not insured well enough for it. Where's Mom? She's with him. But, Christina, they're scared. I've never seen them this way. I was quiet. You don't owe them anything, Matt said after a beat. I know that. But if you want to see him, now might be the time. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. I'll come, I said. At the hospital, I walked into a pale, sterile room where my father looked small for the first time in my life. Not broken. Just human. He opened his eyes and smiled faintly. You came, he said. I came. Mom stood in the corner, wiping her eyes. She didn't rush over. She didn't beg. She just gave me a look filled with 29 years of missed chances. I sat beside Dad. I should have believed in you sooner, he whispered. But I didn't know how. I know, I said. Are we still family? He asked. And for the first time, I answered from the heart. Yes, I said. But we're building a new version of it. Slowly. Honestly. No strings. He closed his eyes and smiled. That was enough. For now. The hospital visit stayed with me long after I walked out the door. The soft beeping of the monitors. The way my father looked at me, not with pride, not with regret, but with something closer to humility. And most of all, the way no one asked for anything. No money. No favors. No opportunities. Just presence. Just time. It was the first time in my entire adult life that being with my family didn't feel like walking into an ambush. I didn't cry when I left the hospital. But later that night, I sat in my apartment, still wearing the same coat I'd worn since college, and let it hit me. Not the grief. The relief. The strange, bittersweet calm of knowing that even though the damage had been deep, it hadn't been permanent. 2 weeks later, I invited my parents over. Not to the record store office. To my apartment. The place they used to mock. The one they thought I stayed in out of necessity, not choice. I brewed loose-leaf tea in a thrift kettle and lit the cinnamon candle I saved for quiet nights. When Mom and Dad arrived, they hesitated at the door like they were entering sacred ground. They didn't compliment the space. They didn't pretend it was more than it was. But they looked around and didn't flinch. That was enough. We sat at the small table I'd refinished myself. No one brought up the past. No one brought up the money. We talked about mundane things. The weather. Mom's new recipe for lentil stew. A book Dad was trying to finish but kept falling asleep during. They left after 2 hours. No drama. No breakdowns. Just a family trying again. And I realized, this was the version I could live with. No grand apologies. No dramatic makeovers. Just a slow repair. Matt reached out again 2 months later. Not for help. For lunch. We met at a small cafe, my pick. He wore sneakers, jeans, and a hoodie. No flashy brands. No designer labels. And for once, he didn't seem to be performing. Just existing. He handed me a brown envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "My debt," he said. "Or what's left of it. I sold my car. Gave up the apartment. Started freelancing." I opened the envelope. It was a spreadsheet. Neatly formatted. A budget. A timeline. Payment plans. "Is this real?" I asked. He nodded. "It's not impressive yet. But it's honest." I studied him for a moment. "You using BudgetWise?" He chuckled. "Religiously." I sipped my coffee. "You finally becoming the responsible one?" He shrugged. "Trying. You made it look better than it is." That surprised me. The honesty in it. The lack of sarcasm. "Matt," I said, "you were a jerk for a long time." "I know. You made me feel invisible." He nodded again. "I know that too. I'm not saying I forgive everything," I said. "But if you keep showing up like this, I might eventually forget the worst parts." His eyes softened. "I'll take that." Melissa was the last to come around. I hadn't heard from her in months. Until she sent me a package. Inside was a photo album. On the cover, us, before everything. The photos were all from our childhood. Popsicle-stained mouths in summer. Christmas mornings in footed pajamas. A sleepover where I taught her how to braid yarn bracelets. On the last page, there was a handwritten note. "I miss that version of us. I know I wrecked things later. But I hope we can still be sisters. Not because of blood. Because we both remember who we used to be." I didn't write back. But I kept the album on my shelf. Right beside the very first sketchbook I ever used when designing BudgetWise. They belonged together. Not because the pain had vanished. But because I had finally accepted that both things could exist in the same life. In May, BudgetWise surpassed 75 million users. I gave a quiet keynote at a tech conference, not streamed, not recorded. Just a room of a few hundred people, most of whom had no idea what I looked like until I stepped onto the stage. I told them what I'd learned. That sometimes your value won't be visible until long after you've already built it. That silence doesn't mean failure. And that sometimes, the best revenge is not revenge at all, but peace. I didn't mention my family. But I thought of them as I spoke. Of the quiet evolution we were undergoing. Not a reconciliation. Not yet. But something slower. Something more honest. That summer, I finally moved out of my tiny apartment. Not because I needed to. But because I was ready. I bought a small house in Boulder. Nothing flashy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. A garden with rosemary and thyme. A porch swing. Before I moved in, I invited my parents and Matt to see it. They brought lemonade and a folding chair. Mom smiled as she stood in the kitchen. "I see you kept the kettle." "Of course," I said. "It still works." Matt sat on the porch swing and laughed. So, no pool? No home theater? I thought about it, I said, deadpan. Then I remembered I don't like company that much. Dad laughed. We all laughed. And for a moment, it didn't feel like anything had been broken. Only mended. Not with gold. But with silence. Boundaries. Effort. And time. Later that evening, after they left, I sat in my garden, legs tucked under me, laptop in my lap. A message popped up in the budget-wise feedback queue. I started using your app after I left a toxic marriage. I had $13 to my name and 2 kids to feed. I just got approved for a mortgage this morning. Thank you. I closed my laptop. Not because I was done working, but because I finally believed the work was doing what it was meant to do. For years.